I totally get it. It's just NBA Summer League. Nobody should be freaking out. Guys are terrible in Summer League all the time and end up being really good. Guys are good in Summer League sometimes and end up being terrible. But can we just put that graphic up really quick? In a draft class that pretty much everybody agreed was terrible, this has been a pretty intriguing start to these guys' careers. We're going to talk about some good and some bad. We have to start with the good, and it is Reed Sheppard. Like, if you're redrafting the draft through the first 2 games of Summer League for these guys, Reed Sheppard goes first, and it's not close. I completely underestimated this guy as a player, and I'm sure plenty of you guys out there did as well. I'm sure there's a lot of people in the comments saying, I knew Reed was going to be like this. I knew that he was this good of a player on the ball. I did not. Like, I knew he was an unbelievable shooter, like record-breaking efficiency in terms of a three-point shooter, but I also knew that he was 6'1" and like made some good defensive plays, pretty good athlete, but that size I felt like was going to be really limiting. It's the same way someone like Rob Dillingham, people were nervous about his size as well. The difference with Reed Sheppard, though, and the thing that I didn't realize, he is incredibly good on the ball. Like, he's legitimately running the point. His decision-making process is fantastic, and it's quick. He's not, calling for a screen and isolating and doing all these things. Everything is within movement. Everything is an immediate reaction play. It's perfect for the way the game is played now, and not just the shooting, but off the dribble shooting as well. From the NBA three-point line, from well beyond that, I could not be more impressed with a guy that I had pretty low expectations for than I have for Reed Sheppard. Like, I felt like he was going to be good, but I felt like it was more of a floor kind of pick for Houston, where you knew he could shoot. You know that he had an elite skill compared to a lot of other guys in this class, and that's something that Houston needed is some floor spacing. I didn't realize that they picked a guy that might be like their long-term point guard. I know it's only a couple games of Summer League, but like, we might be on Jalen Green trade watch here, because Reed Sheppard has just been that good through his first couple of games. Now, defensively, even though, he's got great hands and makes some good plays, his size is going to be an issue long-term for them, certainly if he's someone that ends up playing 25, 30, 35 minutes a game for them. Obviously, we're a long way away from that, but I genuinely can't remember a more impressive 2-game stretch for a rookie in Summer League in the last handful of years. He has just been everything you could have expected and more. And again, that on-ball creation is just something I did not expect. On the opposite end of that spectrum is the second overall pick in the draft, Alex Sarr. Now, it's not to say that he's going to be terrible. It's not to say that, this was the wrong pick or anything like that. It's a couple of games of Summer League, right? But I definitely expected more, even from someone that is definitely a project. I expected a little bit more immediate impact from Sarr. Now, defensively, he has made some nice plays, deflections at the rim, things like that. The athleticism is certainly shown, but there is a little bit of like bad Kristaps Porzingis, bad Mo Bamba. There's a little bit of that kind of stuff in there where it's like, okay, so all you are going to do is shoot jumpers on offense? Like, he has a little bit of that. He's 7'1", and if he would just learn how to shoot and attack the rim and guard defensively at the rim, he could be pretty good, but he thinks he's Kevin Durant. He's got a little bit of that, a little bit of DeAndre Ayton in him right now, where it's just everything he does offensively ends up in a contested jump shot. And that's concerning for a guy that, yes, like, is a project and he's going to have to figure some stuff out long term. It's definitely an upside pick for Washington. And when you look at the physical profile between him and the third overall pick, the guy we just talked about in Reed Sheppard, like 100 times out of 100, you take someone like Alex Sarr. But from a skill set perspective, it's definitely been concerning. It seems like he's a little bit afraid of physicality, certainly in the paint, and that's just against Summer League guys, like not even, much stronger and much more physical guys at the actual NBA level. And I expected more of an overall impact from him from at least a defensive perspective. Honestly, I don't know what I expected, but I expected better than this. And honestly, the shooting form looks fine, and maybe eventually he does turn out to be a pretty good offensive player and figures it out on the defensive end of the floor, but I don't really know what position he's supposed to be. I don't really know what his skill set is supposed to be. And again, I just get nervous about bigs that are this tall that come into the league, and the thing they're most confident in is their ability to shoot jumpers. Again, it's that Mo Bamba thing, it's that DeAndre Ayton thing, a little bit of, bad Kristaps Porzingis, although obviously he figured it out. That kind of stuff just makes me nervous. Next guy I want to talk about, it's not really good and it's not really bad. It's the first time I've talked about this guy on the channel. Zachary Risacher, the first overall pick of the draft. I didn't even bother talking about him in my post-draft, video the night of the draft, because I was just kind of left cold on the selection. I was like, okay, I mean, you picked DeAndre Hunter, basically, with the first overall pick. Now, I will say, I've been impressed in moments by him. The shooting form looks good. That's going to be the make or break skill for him in terms of what he ends up becoming, like, because the floor is obviously there if he ends up being a 38% 3-point shooter, right? It's been very up and down internationally where he has really good stretches and then things kind of fall off. But on the ball, I've been kind of impressed with his instincts and his vision. Hasn't always resulted in assists because that's just the way Summer League is, and these guys aren't always the best out there. But as a connective piece, as a guy that moves the ball, makes shots, can drive a little bit, makes quick closeout decisions, I've been pretty impressed. And obviously the length and the physical profile is there. He's going to need to get stronger to get better defensively, but that's been the good for him. It's like whatever they picked him for, which is this like essentially 3-and-D connective piece, and then maybe with some more upside in terms of shot making long term. That's all been there, with maybe even a little bit more playmaking sprinkled in there than I thought. But it just, again, like the draft is bad. It's hard to really fault them for taking him first overall, but it's the same way I felt after the night of the draft. Picking a connective piece role player guy as the first overall pick in any draft just leaves me feeling a little bit cold. And that's kind of where I've landed with his Summer League performances, is like in moments, I totally see the vision and I totally understand some of the upside that Atlanta is looking for out of him. But in other moments, he's kind of just a guy. And for example, if you watch someone like Reed Sheppard, some of the other guys like Bub Carrington for Washington, who I meant to mention in the Alex Sarr section, I've been really impressed with him as a late lottery pick. Sometimes you watch these games and you're like, oh, Terrence Shannon, like that guy looks really good. Reed Sheppard, that guy looks really good. Bub Carrington, that guy looks really good. And if you didn't know where they were drafted, you would assume that Reed Sheppard was the first pick in the draft, and you would assume that Risacher was like maybe 9th or 10th. And that's kind of where people landed with him in the draft, is like, people would have loved it if he ended up going 9th or 10th. Awesome value. First overall, though, I'm not really sure. Back over on the good side, though, Stephon Castle for San Antonio. It looks like he's only going to play the one game, unfortunately, but honestly, it's kind of all that he needed to play. The concern for him was, okay, we know that he can guard. We know that he's got decent size and length, but what position is he? And if he's not a point guard, he's a little bit small to be playing elsewhere on the perimeter. Well, they clearly immediately showcased the fact that this guy can be an on-the-ball creator, at least at the Summer League level. Like, he's got to figure out, maybe working on some pull-up threes, his float game in the paint and things like that, having a little bit better vision. But he's probably the best guard on the team. Like, obviously, I'm not counting, like, Devin Vassell and guys like that. But if you're thinking about, like, true point guards or actual guys that are going to play the point from last year, he's the best one on the team right now for San Antonio, and seems like he's going to be a really good fit for them. And again, just everything that you would have expected him to be when he got there, he immediately has been. And I don't know that he has necessarily exceeded expectations on the level of someone like Reed Sheppard, but defensively, he's been as advertised, and his make or break skill, for just like for a lot of these guys, is going to be shooting. And if he's a 38% shooter and he's a connected piece, they can move the ball, he's like Marcus Smart, basically. And I don't know if he'll get to that level defensively. That's a defensive player of the year that we're talking about here. And this guy's played one Summer League game. We got to keep having that caveat here. But I was really impressed just with his feel for the game and his ability to make, like, simple plays sounds like a negative thing, but just continue to have the ball moving. And he didn't feel like someone that was like, I'm the 4th overall pick, let me go ahead and create. But when you look at the end of the game, he scored well, created well, and San Antonio was better when he was out there. And again, in comparison to some of these other guys that were kind of picked around him and Reed Sheppard, those for me right now are the two standout guys. Obviously better than someone like Rob Dillingham, better than someone like Ron Holland, although each of those guys have had their moments. It feels like of those 4 guys, they went in the correct order, with Sheppard and Castle going in front of them, obviously, through a couple of Summer League games. Last guy on the list, though, can't make a Summer League video without talking about Bronny, right? Pros and cons here. 1, can't make a shot. Unless it's at the rim, he's not making anything. I think he made 1 jump shot in the California Summer League, and he hasn't made anything so far in actual Summer League in Vegas. And that skill, the ability to make jumpers, is a prerequisite skill for him to get any minutes at all at the NBA level whatsoever. He cannot be a 34% 3-point shooter and be 6'1", not really be able to dribble that well, and just be out there and guard. I do think he can guard, and I do think that he's got, strong hands, and I think there's potentially a role for him on the defensive end of the floor, but he's just not big enough and doesn't impact the game well enough in other ways to be out there if he can't make shots. The downside of that is, and I guess I'm playing into this a little bit by even talking about him in this video, I'm a little just like weirded out by how obsessed we are with this guy. Like, he's the 55th pick in the draft. You could talk about whether you think he should or shouldn't be there, but like, I don't know that we need to be criticizing and saying, oh my gosh, he needs to be go play in China. Like, whatever. It's the 55th pick in the draft. 99 out of 100 guys that get picked in the 50s in the second round we never care about, we never pay any attention to, and then they just don't make it. Odds are Bronny's not going to make it, right? But it's still cool and interesting to pay attention to the story. And let's not evaluate this guy like he's a lottery pick, right? Like, he has a very, very small chance of playing really any minutes at the NBA level in a meaningful way. Like, if he played 1,000 minutes in the NBA, it would be a huge positive relative to where he was drafted. And the downside of kind of what's been happening with him doesn't even have anything to do with his play. It's just how people are talking about him. And it's just, I don't really understand why we need to evaluate him so heavily for a guy that was picked 55th overall. I actually think there are some positives. I think that there's some quick decision making off of closeouts. And again, I think defensively there's something there. And if he can make 3 out of every, 8 threes, I think there's potentially a role for him in the G League, and then he could potentially, grow from there. But yeah, that's pretty much all the Bronny takes I have so far through Summer League.